With our eye sockets row complete, chain 3. Oops. 1, 2, 3. Turn your work. Now in this row we have a bunch of single crochet to work around these guys to start building the top of the skull, this more solid section up here. So you will need to count. Start your first complete cluster. There's something else you may have noticed from looking at the preview or the worked motif up above is that this is where we start to add clusters back in because we're closing the diamond frame. So when I get to my last cluster space, which I've just done, I'm going to hang on to this little bit of chain here quite firmly and work another cluster here. And I kind of think of putting all these stitches right at the start of this chain and grouping them quite tightly. And it doesn't matter if you spread yours out, it doesn't impact on anything. It will work itself out later in the wash, or you can just like scrunch them back along the chain, group them up. Okay, now we start to decrease our chaining stitch along here. We did 7 in the previous row, so now we only do 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we take a look at these eye socket chains and we plan to work 8 single crochet into each eye socket. So 8 in this guy, 8 in that guy. We don't have to worry about any anchor stitches. We just shove our hook into the eye socket and we do 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we go straight onto the next piece of chain and we do 8 more single crochet on this length of chain here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we've done 8 plus 8. No anchor stuff, just single crochet over those chains. Now we chain 6 to get ourselves out of this mess. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have to put a cluster here on this piece of chain before we look for that gap. So don't get stuck here. This is where I've caught myself out a couple times. Here we go, nice and close to that cluster. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and just like before, if they slip along the chain, be the boss, move them back. And when you do your next rows and you keep working up this way, those stitches will pull those clusters into place. So don't fret too much if they're not spaced exactly where you want them to be now. Then I have the feeling that you probably know what to do for the rest of this row. Oh yeah, we just cluster along. Keep on going. Whoops. Find your last space, however you like to create your last DC. There's the top of my chain 3 with my usual bit of fiddling around. Oh, it didn't go in. I went into the space. Can't be having with that, can I? Of course, you can. Do whatever you want. Your scarf, your work. You choose. You have to have an element of choose your own adventure. Now I've made the cotton split, which is all kinds of excellent. Not at all what I was aiming for. Let's see if that does it. Hey, much better. Okay, there's my row complete. So if we have a look at it, my eye sockets have got a bit more shape. I've got a chain 6 on either side, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 clusters either side of my motif. Chain 3 and turn your work. Whoops, bang. All right, half a wonky cluster because it's that very special line. And then cluster in your first space. Now, we're moving on to forehead territory, or eyebrows territory, if you prefer. So when I get to the middle of the motif, I have 8 single crochet on either side of the skull, or either side of the eyeballs. And into those 8, I'm only going to work 6. So that's going to involve chaining 5, skipping the first single crochet, and only working 6, and that will help to make the dome of the forehead shape. And I'm really sorry if that's wildly obvious to you, but it took me a little bit to get the hang of, hence my explanation. Okay, so here I am. Run out of spaces. Because I'm building the top of my diamond, I have to tape it in. So I yarn over, I put another cluster here in the corner like I did before. Whoops. Scrunch my stitches over if I need to. I chain 1 less than the preceding row, so I only get to chain 5 this time. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm going to skip my first single crochet, and out of these 8, I'm only going to work into 6. I'm actually going to skip the middle 2 stitches. That helps to kind of pull them together this way. So I'm working into the middle 6 of each group of 8. So skipping that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that can help if you have trouble working out where to start. You can always count from the inside out. Okay, there are no real rules here. There's my middle one that I'm going to skip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm not working into this guy. I'm going 1 over, and that's where my first single crochet falls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I skip this, and I skip the next one as well. I'm skipping the middle 2 of the previous row, and then I work 6 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can see I've got 1 spare on the end that I didn't use, okay, because I started with 8 in the preceding row. I've used the middle 6 of each group of 8. Now I get to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I look for my corner. I can scrunch over my previous row's cluster, and I put a cluster in here because I'm shrinking my frame. So you might want to grab that chain around the back and hold on to that to let you work your cluster neatly. 2, 3. And then I just cluster along to the end of my scarf again. 1, 2, whoop, 3. I'm reminded as I work into these motifs why I like crochet hooks with pointy tips, because sometimes as my tension changes a little bit on that motif, it's really nice to have that extra point on my side to stick into a single crochet and to find the stitch properly. So if you're consistently having trouble with stitches, take a look at your hooks, because not everyone works with the same equipment. Different physiology and different styles and different muscular habits all have different strengths and weaknesses, and sometimes tweaking your equipment can really help. One in the space, one in the chain. Don't split the cotton, and there's that row done. You can see I've got eyebrows now. Okay, and that's starting to taper my skull in, and I'm starting to get the top of my diamond motif. Let me just pull this down. So you can see this is shrinking in, and obviously I keep adding clusters to build to the point. Okay, let's chain 3 and turn the work. 1, 2, 3. One solid cluster. Okay, now this time, when we hit the middle motif, we're following the curve of the skull, but instead of working, I think of it as working 5 plus 5. I had my 2 groups of 8, and I worked 2 groups of 6 over that, and now I'm going to do 2 groups of 5. So again, I'm skipping the first single crochet and the last single crochet, and that makes the dome of the skull shape. And again, this is just how my brain works. If I have logic to where the stitches go, it's a little bit easier for me to remember motifs like this and to look at it and think, yeah, that's correct. I'm doing a good job. Okay, I run out of spaces. We all know we have to put an extra cluster in here. So hold your chain tight. And 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm making my diamond shape. Previously, I had 5 chains in this row, so now I only get to do 4 because I'm decreasing. 2, 3, 4. And I'm decreasing my forehead as well and making the dome shape. So, like I said before, I'm only going to work 5 and 5. Skip your first stitch there and work into the second single crochet. And think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That should put you at the middle of your skull. Sweet. Do 5 more. 10 in total. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I've got my 10 across the top, or as I think of it, 5 and 5. 5 in each eye socket. Now I chain my way out of that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put my new cluster into this chain. 1, 2, whoops, 3. Now I'm ready to cluster into my spaces again. 2, 3. And on we go. How is it I always stuff up that second double crochet in a cluster? It's always the easy stuff, right? You start to relax a little bit, your brain switches off, and then you just miscalculate. But you can see I wasn't lying to you. This pattern doesn't have a lot of different stitches. It's just about being able to count and look really carefully at your stitch placement. No magic to it at all. Here comes the last cluster. Whoops. I'm going to look for the top of my chain 3. My pointy little hook. Ta-da! So there's that row finished. You can see the top of my skull starting to taper in nicely there. Looks just like the one I prepared earlier. Happy days. Okay. Chain 3 and turn your work. Oh, I've got to start with a wonky one. I love it when that happens. Okay, it's my wonky I'm feeling lucky tonight. I dropped a blanket and a cardi round to my grandmother, and in exchange she presented me with the last thing she knitted before she had half of her right forefinger amputated. Thank you very much, Cancer. That's fantastic. It's a knit one, purl one, moss stitch jumper or cardigan with a hood, and it's wool, and it's so warm and cozy. And since I don't knit, having a knitted garment is quite the novelty for me. It's really toasty. All right, cluster away. So close. Oh, I'm nearly there. There's my last cluster between clusters. Here comes the chain space that I have to fill up by, you guessed it, adding another cluster. I'm just going to bunch that one up there. 1, 2, pinchy fingers, 3. There they are, wedged into the corner. Now, my previous row, I had chain 4. So now I only get to chain 3, because remember we decrease on the way up. 2, 3. I'm now going to work a total of 6 single crochet, or 3 plus 3, into my top. Now, I had 10, 5 plus 5, so I have to skip the first 2, and that should let me fit 6 across with 2 on either side spare. 3, 4, 5, whoops, 6. Does it look right? This is always a good test. Does it look right? Yep, looks good to me. I've got 2 spare on that side, 2 spare on the far side. Excellent. Chain your 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, that's wrong. Chain 3, sorry. Chain your 3. I did 4 in the preceding row, I forgot. Chain your 3 and wedge another cluster in. 1, 2, and 3. And don't forget, if they're in the wrong spot on the chain, just shunt them along. It's not a big deal. Cluster into your spaces just like always. All right, so in our next row across, we're going to do the last row on the top of the skull. And then we have to talk about how to finish this diamond framing section off, because otherwise we just have a skull floating awkwardly in space with, nothing happening above it, and that's going to be really weird and wonky. So prepare yourself for a row that's nearly all clusters. So exciting. And then your brain gets to take a little vacation while you plan how many cluster rows you want to put between this motif and your next skull motif. And we'll have a little chat about that in just a sec. There is the end of our row. Let's have a look. Hey, skull's nearly complete. So exciting. Okay,